A cemetery is a place in which dead bodies and cremated remains are buried. The term cemetery comes from Greek words meaning sleeping place. Cemeteries in the Western world are the place where the final ceremonies of death are observed. These ceremonies differ according to cultural practice and religious belief. The first burial customs began in prehistoric times, where early humans would drop the dead into a hole and cover it with a stone. Some of the dead's possessions may have been placed with the body. Some burials during this time were accidental. If a hunter was wounded, his companions would put him in a cave and seal it. If the hunter recovered, he was supposed to move the stones and climb out, but sometimes he would die in the cave. Prehistoric humans also might have purposely buried their dead in a shallow hole with a heavy stone to prevent them from coming back to life. Some of the earliest tombs were made in Egypt, China, and Rome. In Egypt, the dead were wrapped in linen and the pharaohs were buried in huge pyramids. In the Middle Ages and Victorian times, European burial was under the control of the church and could only take place on church ground. Any number of corpses might be buried together in a hole only a few feet deep. After the bodies were put in the shallow holes, plagues rose through the soil and infected most people going to Mass and the children playing in the areas around the churches. In the late 18th century and throughout the 19th century, the burial of the dead in graveyards was discontinued. This was because there was a very sharp rise in the size of the population during the early stages of the Industrial Revolution, and there were continued outbreaks of highly infectious diseases in towns and cities. Many graveyards in cities were located on land within the city walls. In cemeteries, human corpses may cause groundwater pollution, not because of toxicity they possess, but by increasing the concentrations of naturally occurring organic and inorganic substances. When these substances are increased enough, they could render groundwater unusable. During decomposition of the human corpse, there is a seepage of decay products into any nearby groundwater. This seepage contains bacteria, viruses, and organic and inorganic chemical decomposition products. If the cemetery is located in a porous soil type, such as sand or gravel, movement of seepage can be rapid and mix easily with the groundwater beneath the site. Both survival and retention of bacteria and viruses are dependent on the type of soil in which a cemetery is sited, the type of microorganisms present, the prevailing ground temperature, and rainfall.
In some places in the country and in the world, the water table is not very far below the surface of the ground. So if they buried the deceased close to the water table, those decomposition chemicals could actually get into the drinking water and sometimes transfer illness and other times just create unpleasant taste. However, the chemical process of decomposition also produces a lot of nitrogen, which is great for plants and that sort of thing. So the old saying of going on to the promised land and leaving behind fertilizer has a ring of truth to it.
Embalming is a process of injecting the body with a combination of various chemicals to temporarily prevent decomposition and restore a natural appearance for viewing the body after death. Over 820,000 gallons of embalming fluid is buried in the U.S. each year. The formaldehyde mixture used to embalm bodies is composed of 37% formaldehyde, 10 to 15% methyl alcohol, and 48 to 53% water. Formaldehyde's health rating is a 3, meaning it is severely poisonous and is considered a Class 1 carcinogen. Formaldehyde has been known to cause cancer in those who have extended exposure to embalming fluid, such as the embalmers in a funeral home. Ingesting or inhaling formaldehyde can cause death. If formaldehyde is released into soil, it is expected to quickly leach into any groundwater and can remain there for up to 10 days. When released into the air, it can remain for up to 30 days. In the United States, if formaldehyde is leaked into the environment knowingly, it must be reported to the U.S. Coast Guard. Embalming fluid can leak into the soil as the bodies in cemeteries decay, and any animals who come in contact with the chemicals can be severely injured or killed. Besides the potential harmful effects that cemeteries can have on humans, a cemetery can be as bad as a landfill for the environment. With over 150,000 people dying each day on Earth, the space to put bodies is running out. Concrete and stone in large amounts destroys habitats for animals and plants and can disrupt ecosystems by depositing unnatural amounts of bacteria and organic materials in small spaces. People are becoming more aware of this problem, and steps are being taken to halt the negative ecological effects of cemeteries. Natural cemeteries have been popping up all over the world in a desire to be environmentally friendly. Bodies in eco-cemeteries are often buried in a biodegradable coffin, or even without a coffin if the body is just wrapped in shrouds. This way, the body decomposes faster and naturally becomes part of the environment. In traditional cemeteries, steps are also being taken to ensure that any materials inside the coffin or the coffin itself do not harm the environment.
And it seems that nowadays, to prevent the products of decomposition from getting into the soil and into the water table and that sort of thing, they've recognized this problem for many, many years, especially since the mores of our society dictated that we bury all dead people in cemeteries as opposed to in the backyard like your dog you would today. But people used to bury their families in their family plots on their farms, that sort of thing. And a lot of times the chemicals produced during the decomposition process would leach into the water table, and they could actually taste Aunt Mary in their drinking water. So that was not a good thing for them. So nowadays, when they put them all in cemeteries, the problem got even worse because there's a lot of decomposition going on under the soil there. So some of the things they have done, they use a concrete crypt that they will put in the hole that they dig in the ground. The casket is usually a steel casket. They don't use wood anymore for the most part, just for that reason. But it's a steel jacketed casket that's, when sealed, it's airtight, and the decomposition takes place inside that sealed container or the casket. And the casket is then lowered into the concrete crypt, which anything that leaks out of the casket after an amount of time, where the metal starts to rust and decompose itself, will all be contained in the concrete. And by the time it ever gets through the concrete out into the soil, it could leach into the water table. Generally, there's nothing left.